Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're all about making sense of complex issues, especially for those of you gearing up for the UPSC exams.
Yeah, exactly. Those exams demand a really deep understanding of current events, especially those at the intersection of law, governance, and the economy.
For sure. And today we're going to dive deep into a recent Supreme Court ruling, one that has some serious implications for arrest powers under the Customs Act and the CGST Act.
It's a big one.
Yeah, we're basically taking a magnifying glass to this ruling straight from the pages of the Indian Express to figure out what it means for both the authorities and, of course, the rights of individuals. So, where should we start?
Well, the heart of the matter is really about the potential misuse of arrest powers by tax officials. There have been concerns about overreach, and that's what the Supreme Court is trying to address with this judgment.
Okay, so less about taxes themselves, more about how these powers are being used.
Exactly. So our goal today is to break down the key points of this ruling, really unpack it and see what it means for everyone involved.
Sounds good. Lead the way.
All right, so the case we're looking at is Radhika Agarwal v. Union of India. And the core of the Supreme Court's decision is that officials using powers like arrest, search, and seizure under the Customs Act of 1962 and the CGST Act of 2017, they are now bound by the same limitations and safeguards that apply to police officers under the Code of Criminal Procedure, the CrPC, that is.
Okay, so bringing them under the same umbrella as regular police procedure.
Exactly. And this move actually aligns with a broader trend we've been seeing from the Supreme Court, a push for more accountability and adherence to due process.
Like that Arvind Kejriwal case from back in 2025.
Right. That one was about safeguards for arrests under the PMLA. And now this Radhika Agarwal ruling extends those same protections to customs in CGST cases. It's really interesting to see this pattern emerge.
Yeah, definitely seems like the court is trying to set a clear standard. So I guess the next question is, what exactly are these customs and CGST officials, and what kind of powers are we talking about?
Well, they're not formally designated as police officers, but in practice, they have a lot of similar investigative powers.
So, like, they can actually arrest people.
Oh, yeah. They can arrest, search, seize goods, conduct interrogations, all that.
Wow. So essentially the court is saying, okay, you have these powers, but you can't go beyond what a regular police officer can do, and you got to follow the same rules.
Exactly. This ruling is drawing a firm line in the sand, and that line is the CrPC, the Code of Criminal Procedure. It's the backbone of criminal procedure in India.
Right, the CrPC.
Yeah.
But how does it apply to, like, specific acts dealing with customs and GST?
Well, think of it this way. Sections 4 and 5 of the CrPC, they're like broad strokes, They basically say, hey, unless a specific law says otherwise, the CrPC is going to govern how things are done.
So if the Customs Act or the CGST Act doesn't have a specific procedure for, say, an arrest, the CrPC fills the gap.
You got it. It ensures consistency and protects individual rights, which is super important. Now, for our UPSC folks out there, here's what you need to know. The ruling reaffirms some key rights for anyone arrested under these acts. First, you have the right to be brought before a magistrate within 24 hours. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Got to have that judicial oversight.
Right. Second, you have the right to tell a family member or friend about the arrest, so there's transparency. And third, you have the right to have a lawyer present during interrogation. This is like your legal shield.
Okay, those are some solid safeguards. Now, I know there's a distinction between different types of offenses under these acts, right? Like some are more serious than others.
You're right. Under the Customs Act, specifically Section 104, we see the difference between cognizable and non-cognizable offenses.
Okay, break that down for me.
So cognizable offenses, those are the big ones, like smuggling prohibited goods or evading duty over 50 lakh. These are offenses where an officer can arrest you right then and there without a warrant.
Oh, wow. Straight to jail.
Yeah, pretty much. Then there are non-cognizable offenses, everything else that falls under the Customs Act. For these, the officer needs to get a magistrate's approval before making an arrest. The CGST Act, Section 132, follows a similar pattern, different levels of offenses with different procedures.
So basically the power to arrest without a warrant, that's for the serious stuff, the stuff that really impacts the economy.
Right, you got it. And this brings us back to the issue of preventing arbitrary arrests, especially in light of that Kejriwal case.
The one that set those important safeguards.
Exactly. The court was very clear. The power to arrest without a warrant, it's a big deal. It shouldn't be taken lightly. And the Kejriwal ruling, well, that laid down some strict safeguards under the PMLA. Now, here's the kicker. The Radhika Agarwal ruling extends those safeguards to customs and CGST arrests as well.
That's huge. So what are those safeguards again?
So first, the officer has to have actual material evidence before making the arrest. No fishing expeditions, basically.
Evidence first, arrest second. Makes sense.
Then they have to have a documented reason to believe that the person is guilty. And this can't be just a hunch. It has to be based on the evidence.
So no arresting someone just because you have a bad feeling about them.
Nope. And the third safeguard is that the person being arrested has to be told exactly why they are being arrested, like the specific grounds for arrest, so they can understand the situation and seek legal help.
That seems fair. Everyone deserves to know why they're being detained.
Right. It's about due process. And the Radhika Agarwal ruling really hammered home the point that mere suspicion, no matter how strong, is not enough to justify an arrest.
Okay, that's a good point. But I'm curious about this reason to believe thing. How do we make sure it's not just, open to interpretation?
That's a valid concern, and the Supreme Court addressed it head on. They said officers now have to write down their reasons to believe, put it in black and white.
So creating a paper trail, basically.
Yep. And those reasons have to clearly connect the decision to arrest with the actual evidence in the case. The courts might not get into the nitty-gritty of those reasons right away, but they will make sure they make sense.
So it has to be more than just, I have a feeling.
Exactly. And the Radhika Agarwal ruling made it clear that even though the Customs and CGST Acts might not spell it out, documenting those reasons is now considered essential. No more wiggle room.
Gotcha. And this whole thing about being informed of the reasons for your arrest, that just seems like basic fairness.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court really doubled down on that. You have the right to know exactly why you're being arrested, what specific offense you're accused of, and what led the officer to believe you did it.
Transparency is key, right?
Totally. It ensures that you're not left in the dark so you can challenge the arrest if you need to.
Right, makes sense. Now, I know there were reports about these arrest powers being used to, force people to pay taxes, which is really concerning. Did the court address that?
Oh, yeah, they did. And they didn't mince words. The court said, straight up, that using the threat of arrest to get people to cock up tax money, that's illegal. Plain and simple. Especially if the tax liability is still being disputed or figured out.
So no arm-twisting tactics allowed.
Nope, not anymore. And anyone who's been pressured into paying taxes this way, they can now go to court and ask for a refund.
Okay, so there's recourse for people who've been unfairly targeted.
Yeah. And there might even be consequences for the officials who did it, like disciplinary action. The court also told the CBIC, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, to come up with guidelines.
Guidelines for what?
Guidelines to stop this whole threaten to arrest for tax recovery thing. It's about setting clear boundaries.
Okay, wow. So if I'm hearing you right, the Supreme Court basically tightened the reins on these arrest powers under the Customs and CGST Acts, right?
That's the gist of it, yeah.
Yeah.
They want to make sure those powers are used responsibly and fairly.
And for those of you listening who are prepping for your UPSC exams, this is gold. It touches on so many important themes like law, governance, the economy, individual rights. It's a must-know.
This ruling is a great example of how the judiciary tries to balance the powers of the state with the rights of citizens, especially when it comes to economic offenses. Really thought-provoking stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And think about it. How might this ruling change how tax authorities do their investigations? And on the flip side, how will it affect people and businesses facing scrutiny?
These are the questions UPSC wants you to ponder. This is all about critical thinking and analyzing real-world scenarios.
Couldn't agree more. And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.
We've got your back with all the UPSC relevant stuff.
Got any burning questions about this case or anything else? Drop them in the comments below. And remember, we got all this from the Indian Express, so go check out the full article for more details.
Always good to read the source material.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep learning and keep striving.
See y'all soon.